Okay, so I just got done watching Rebel Moon Part 2, The ScarGiver, and it appears that audiences are not receiving this movie well. Its Rotten Tomatoes score is not good, both from critics and audiences. So, first off, the first one, Rebel Moon Part 1, got a critic score of 21%, audience score of 57%. Rebel Moon Part 2 got a critic score of 18%, an audience score of 48%. Now, I stand by what I've said about these scores before. Typically, if you get audience and critic score semi in line, it's more than likely accurate. And I'm not going to say that that's not the case here. People genuinely do not like the movie. Now, there's probably several reasons for this. One of the reasons may be people's just outright hatred and disdain for Zack Snyder, but maybe the movie is just trash. I have been known in the past to enjoy movies that people just did not enjoy. They didn't like. And I enjoyed the movies. I had no issue with them. This would not be the first time. Could it be that the hatred for Zack Snyder is so large, is so vehement that people will not give this movie a chance, even if it is good? I don't know. I can't say for a fact that that's the case. I think maybe a good possibility is that people are not willing to give some new movie an opportunity, some new IP a chance. It seems as though Netflix is trying to build a competitor to Star Wars. Now, the creation of Star Wars was something magnificent, especially in the time it came out. It was in a class all its own. There were similar movies. It's not that there weren't movies that were similar in nature, but Star Wars was a whole entire other animal. And I believe it may be harder for something of that nature to break out in the way Star Wars broke out because there is so much competition. There's so many movies that have cult followings, that have sequels and prequels, and people follow these movies and they love the movies. You can go from Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, of course, Star Wars that we're talking about. So the competition is definitely more steep. So Rebel Moon has a steep hill to climb. I think sometimes it's hard to please people that are used to a specific thing. And if you are the new kid on the block, you're just not accepted. And that's unfortunate, but it's the way it happens. To some degree, entertainment sometimes can be a popularity contest. And I can point you to the example of comic books. It's harder for indie comic books to break out. I'm not saying indie comic books don't have success and people don't love them, but to have a breakout success is abnormal. It does happen, but it's abnormal because people don't like change. My thoughts on Rebel Moon is it's a good movie. It's not the most mind-blowing movie I've ever seen, but there are things about the movie that I do like. It is just entertaining. The movie doesn't seem to be preachy in any way. If it is, maybe I missed it. The visuals are pleasing. The storyline is enough. Some of the things about the storyline is cheesy. I'm not sure how you escape the cheesy nature of building the story of a new sci-fi IP, especially dealing with a space saga. We're so used to Star Wars, Star Trek, Battlestar Galactica. Those, I think, in the past, I would say 35 years or so, are the most successful space sagas. I'm sure there's other ones I've forgotten. Dune, another very successful space saga. And I think there's room for more to exist within this space, but I think some people may not be able to receive Rebel Moon as it was meant to be received. It's something new, it's something different. A lot like Star Wars in many ways, you have rebels and a galactic empire. So it's similar in a lot of ways. but I think it's enjoyable. I think the acting is fine. I think the special effects are fine. They're believable. Especially if I had to, I mean, if I had to put this up against other Netflix series, I would say, or other just streaming series in general, I would say that this movie really does well. So I'm going to read some of the reviews from the audience. One person says, edge of your seat from start to finish. Love this. Bring on Rebel Moon 3. Of course, that was a critic that enjoyed it. Here's somebody who didn't enjoy it, which I'm trying to get to see what these people thought. It says part 2 is really, really, really bad. I mean, that doesn't really, I don't really get anything from that. Okay, you believe it's really, really bad. Explain to me why you believe it's really, really bad. Not that there's not valid reasons to believe that, but to just say that and give no reason, I don't really know what I'm expected to do with that. Okay. Another person says, awful, convoluted mess with too much slow-mo. A bargain Star Wars ripoff. And this I think is like I said, the unfortunate truth is movies take inspiration from other movies. Anything you create, you're going to pull from things that inspired you. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to do a complete ripoff, nor do I believe Rebel Moon is a complete ripoff. Definitely inspired by George Lucas, definitely inspired by Star Wars. It's hard to look at any brand new space saga and not in some way see an influence of Star Wars. And I understand people's reticence to accept something new. Like I said, it's hard for us to do. This person gave 2.5 stars. It says Rebel Moon. Let me open a full review. Rebel Moon Part 2 was decent, but not that great. The story is painfully slow for the first half, with poor dialogues, overuse of slow-mo. Yes, again, slow-mo for farming. The flashback works in some cases, at least. They really missed an opportunity with the robot. Story-wise, it's a big mess. The CGI is a mixed bag. Some feels cheesy, some are great. The actors are still average by any standard except General Titus, which at least shows intensity. I give it 60%. You can skip to a minute, 1 minute, 1 minute 28 seconds, or an hour 28 minutes, my bad, if you want to watch the best parts only. I don't know. I don't know that I agree with this. Like I said, I understand how hard it is for a creator to convey a certain thought, right? If you have a thought process you're going with and it's something new, you're attracting and building a new fan base. So you don't have an establishment of fans. And this, let me explain myself. Star Wars has an establishment of fans. Fans like Star Wars for a particular reason. If you change that too much, people will no longer want to watch Star Wars because the thing you used to pull them in, they don't see anymore. And now they no longer enjoy your IP. I don't know if that's the case or if that would be the case with Rebel Moon. As I explained, it's something new. So being something new, it's going to bring you something new that you've never seen before, and it's going to deliver the story the way the storyteller meant for the story to be delivered. Not everybody's cup of tea. Look, and I've said this before, I could not name you all of Zack Snyder's films. I've never really been one to follow a certain director. There are certain directors I'm familiar with. Obviously, they're the biggest names, and loosely familiar with. If somebody says Steven Spielberg, you typically think this is going to be a good movie. And if Jon Favreau does something, you kind of expect this is probably going to be good. So I'm not saying I don't know anything about Zack Snyder, but I don't follow him enough. I don't follow anyone enough to be able to name for you everything they've made. So I'm I'm not a Zack Snyder proselyte, nor am I a Zack Snyder hater. I did not have a problem with the slow mo scenes. I like slow mo in movies. I think it works well, but that's just my humble opinion. So let's read some more bad reviews. Just awful. Fast forward through a lot of the movie. The parts that I actually watch were a waste of time. And I wonder when I look at some of these critiques, and I'm no professional movie critic, but when I look at some of these critiques, I'm like, man, this is a very basic critique. So it seems as though people just wanted to attack. The movie has been out for all of a day and a half, and people are already on the warpath. Which, look, there are movies that come out that really aren't that good. I've seen some movies that I'm like, oh man, this is just not good. Think about it some more, let it sit, and I'm just no, it's really not good. And I'm not saying that people genuinely don't enjoy this movie. People probably genuinely do not like the movie. I do, however, wonder how much of this is primarily Zack Snyder hate. Maybe, maybe not. Okay, basic, lackluster film. Really didn't care who lived or died. Now, I disagree there. When I watched this, when people died, it mattered to me. There are characters that died that I was like, oh man, I was hoping to see some more from this character. It says, even when you hope something half decent was about to happen, it still missed the mark. Part one left you hoping something good was about to happen. Part two left you feeling that you'd wasted your time. And I disagree there. Part one led you to believe that something good was coming, and something good did come. I'm not going to give any spoilers, but I think watching part one and waiting for what was going to happen in part two paid off. So I want to go to this article from Screen Rant, and this article goes over Rebel Moon and its shortcomings. So the article says, director Zack Snyder breaks an unwanted record that stood for 13 years as Rebel Moon 2's Rotten Tomato audience score is revealed. It says Zack Snyder breaks an unwanted record that stood for 13 years as Rebel Moon. Yeah, I read that already. It began as a Star Wars pitch, but Zack Snyder's sci-fi saga took on a life of its own thanks to Netflix, which released Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, back in 2023. Snyder's saga now continues with the release of the second Rebel Moon movie, which sees Korra leading her band of warriors in a battle against the evil forces of the Mother World and Admiral Noble. And look, I think this is the crux of the matter. When you stand in the shadows of giants, you will always be compared to those giants. No matter how dynamite LeBron James is as an athlete, no matter how good he is and at what age, he will always live under the shadow of Michael Jordan. Kobe Bryant was probably, I think anybody would argue, second in line to Michael Jordan. But no matter how great he was, he stood in the shadows of Jordan. Now, there will come a point when enough time passes that someone will surpass Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, and LeBron James, and those three will be in the distant memories of time past. But there are times where you just stand in the shadows of these giants and you cannot seem to escape. Sometimes people do escape. At some point, people realize, okay, we have to move on. Things have changed. Things are no longer the same. Okay, Rebel Moon Part 2, The ScarGiver, represents the middle of a planned trilogy, but things aren't going great for Snyder's saga as the Rebel Moon second Rotten Tomatoes audience score stands at just 46%, breaking the record held for 13 years by Sucker Punch, which comes in just a notch higher at 47%. Rebel Moon 2 can still climb above Sucker Punch, however, as under 300 audience reviews have been counted. Let's see. Uh, Critics have long been hard on Snyder, consistently giving his films bad reviews, leading to low Rotten Tomatoes fresh ratings. Regular moviegoers have tended to be kinder to the Rebel Moon 2 director. However, as reflected in his Rotten Tomatoes audience score, uh, though the gulf is not as wide as might be expected given Zack Snyder's vociferous fan base, true to that trend, the second Rebel Moon movie has a higher audience score than critics' ratings, 46% to 18%. But that 46% is still disappointing as it now represents the low mark for Snyder's film pending more reviews. And it gives a list of all Zack Snyder's films and their scores. Justice League 2021 had an audience score of 93%. 300, which was a great movie. Visually, 300 was probably one of the most stunning movies, and just the way it was done, it was just different. And that got 89%, which I'm shocked. I would think that would get more. Dawn of the Dead, never seen it, 77%. Army of the Dead, another movie I've never seen, 75%. Man of Steel, 75%, which, that I'm going to tell you why I think that's surprising. And I'll have to go back and look at the reviews for that. This really does make me wonder if people they hate Zack Snyder so much that they will not give him a break, because Man of Steel was a great Superman movie. Now, you might disagree. I might have to have my boy Don on again. He's a bigger DC fan than me, and I believe he's a really big Superman fan. I could be mistaken, but I think Man of Steel was a great movie, and I'd like to know what he thinks about that. Watchmen, saw that movie. It was decent, 71%. I think that's a decent score. Legend of the Guardians, The Owls of Ga'Hoole, 64%. Never saw that movie. Batman versus Superman, Dawn of Justice, 63%. I personally think that's a legit score. I was not a huge fan of that movie. I know a bunch of people loved it. Again, sometimes I like things people don't like. It happens. And sometimes people love things that I don't like. That happens. I like things sometimes that are niche. It is what it is. Rebel Moon Part 1, A Child of Fire, 57% audience score. Sucker Punch, 47%. Rebel Moon Part 2, 46%. So the fans have spoken. It seems as though fans have decided this is a movie they do not like. They are not rocking with. But is that truly the case? Well, I mean, according to the Rotten Tomatoes score, it's just not doing well. And I'm not going to say that this score is not accurate, but I will say I wonder how much of this score is based on the fact that Zack Snyder's name is attached to this film. Put anybody else's name in front of this film, and I wonder if the score would be the same.